and welcome to the 7th module of our course. Now that we've been through the Illustrator and After Effects interface and workflow, it's time for us to begin creating a complete animation and apply all the knowledge and techniques we've learned throughout this course. In the first part of this module, I'll work with the first 2/3 of the animation. We'll look at how to tackle the animation project based on the script provided. The brief, the script, and the first steps. And before we start, I'll give you a brief explanation of the project as if a client has sent us their requirements. In this case, the client is the Olympic Games Committee, and they want to share the history of the event through a series of short animations between 20 to 30 seconds long. These will loop and will be used to target a younger audience through posts on Instagram. We'll pretend there are no brand guidelines. The only thing we have to work with is an SVG logo file and hex codes for the 5 Olympic colors. We also have the approved GeoGrotesque font that can be used in regular or semi-bold weights. The script provided for the first animation is as follows. Now that we have everything we need, we can start dividing our script into artboards inside of Illustrator. Before we do that, let's create a visual script for the project. A visual script will help us share our ideas with a project manager and/or client. It is a basic structure for how the animation will work and will elaborate on ideas for what will happen in each scene. In Google Docs, I already have a table template ready for the visual script, and I'll quickly divide all my text into different scenes. I'll add an extra scene in the beginning for the logo. Once that's done, describe the actions of what you think should happen in each scene based on the content, and if possible, describe how it will animate in and out from one scene to another. We can also use another column where we display reference images or the provided graphs and diagrams from the client. The last 2 scenes are going to remain blank, as we will work on that in the next lesson. In the second part of these first steps, we should simultaneously work on the mood board. We can share this with our client to showcase the proposed style and what we think will work for the project. To do this, you can search the web for animations with a similar visual style that suits the client's needs. Take screenshots of suitable frames and add them to a collage. Depending on the client, sometimes you can add 1 or 2 links to the animations you're using as references. This will not only reference the style, but also give them an idea as to how your project will be animated. During this phase of the project, you will send the visual script and mood board to the client. It's also best practice to send samples of your voiceover artists and get them to choose one. They need to approve the structure and overall visual proposition before you move forward. These steps might seem over the top, but they give us early and important feedback from the client that will help us avoid bigger and more time-consuming changes down the line. Style frames and storyboarding. With the structure and visual style approved, we can now go into Illustrator and start dividing the text from the visual script up and add them onto the artboards, just like we learned in our first lessons. For this project, let's create 6 artboards and make them 1080 by 1080 because we know that this content will be used on Instagram. I'll leave 500 pixels between each of my artboards and then add the text boxes underneath ready to paste sentences from the script. With everything set up, we can start working on the style frames. This is a really short animation, so let's only create 2 scenes to send to the client for approval. Depending on the length, size, and scope of any project, we might send up to 4 or 5 style frames. Style frames might include character designs or other types of assets like photos. Let's jump ahead, and as you can see, I have 2 frames based on the mood board and decided to go for a clean style that uses a white stroke with blue tinted shadows around objects. This enables me to use a gray background to make that white stroke more visible. When we get into After Effects, I'll show you how you can add the white stroke to our animated objects without having to animate both the white and the color stroke. I added different sized white stroke circles and small dot particles to the background to keep everything consistent and reinforce the Olympic branding. As for the illustrations, I decided to have a mix of stroke line icons mixed with single elements for each scene that are shaded without a stroke. This helps to keep the balance of the Olympic logo, which is formed by a thick stroke that looks like a fill. Also, as described in the visual script, I intend to use rings to transition from one scene to another and use a ring to contain on-screen text throughout the animation. Certain keywords will be highlighted using the same color palette and in a way that creates contrast against the container ring. Now that the style frames are ready, I'll add them to the PDF template and have the script excerpts on top and place the image underneath. Then we can once again send it to the client for feedback. Once we get them approved, we can then move on to the storyboard part of the project. With our style now set, we can create the rest of the scenes in our animation. In this example, I've already jumped ahead and created 2 more scenes, including the logo opening. But again, I've left the last 2 scenes blank for the next lesson. It is super important that we keep things consistent when creating scenes and assets. You need to create rules as to how certain elements will work in order to keep the visual style consistent throughout the animations. This is especially important if we're going to be working with other designers on the project. The person that works on the style frames and storyboard needs to create a list with important information that the other designers can follow during the project development. Here are some rules for this project. Text should always be in a single line. Use the GeoGrotesque font in semi-bold weight at 60 points with 50 tracking points. This can be lowered to a minimum of 0 if needed. Icon line strokes need to have a 5-point stroke weight, and all color accents should go inside without touching the outer stroke. There needs to be one solid illustration color asset per scene with a white stroke around it and a blue shadow underneath. The color palette for this animation is on screen, and these are the hex codes for each color. We use 2 different background elements, the first being the white circles, and the second one is the color particles. The background color should be the color shown on screen with this exact hex code. Along with these rules, we also need to share all of the Illustrator files with the style frames with the other designers, just in case there are extra assets that are not located in the storyboards. We encourage other designers that will take part in this project to create 1 or 2 scenes from their assigned storyboard. This can be reviewed internally before they work on the entire project. Having these rules and making sure they are applied will make the project run smoother and avoid a lot of changes when the client reviews the animations. Once we have our storyboard, we can send it to the client as a PDF, like the one I'm showing on screen. From the storyboard, we can also create an animatic. This makes it easier for the client to grasp the timing of the project, as the animatic is made from the storyboard and is used to time the visuals to the voiceover and can include music. It has no animation or transitions required. Always ensure that the client understands what they are reviewing. For example, if they don't know what the purpose of the animatic is, they might be confused as to why there is no animation.